For me, in 2025, starting off with rim to rim to rim and then ended up into running this half marathon. It was so fun going from ultra to speed and then throughout trying to balance strength and conditioning. But to me, arguably my favorite part was trying to balance all of that, all my athletic pursuits with raising a family and growing a company. That's been probably one of the more enjoyable but challenging things I've done.
First one of the year, rim to rim to rim.
To me, I think rim to rim to rim actually stemmed from seeing Todd and Jesse do their bout through rim to rim in the Grand Canyon, and I didn't even know it was a thing until then. And I had been in the Grand Canyon prior with my father, and it was so much fun, and it was really hard. I remember my hips being so sore just going right from South Rim to the river and back up. So just the idea of going rim to rim to rim, you knew that there was only going to be one way to get out. It was on your own two legs. And there's something just kind of savage about that I loved, but also knowing that we were going to be with a bunch of guys that could push. So heading into that, the training was so fun because it was a lot of vert, tons of weighted step ups and lunges and ways to like start building up my legs and building up the capacity and the endurance. And I had done ultras prior, but I had never done this self-supported total change in climate, 12,000 feet of vert across a single day period. I've never done that before. And also knowing that I would be with guys that have done Leadville and done it in a really fast time, I was pumped, but at the same time a little nervous. And when we had gotten there, we actually camped out on the trailhead and in our buddy Matt Bickle's Sprinter van. And I remember going to sleep that night and then waking up knowing that we were going to be waking up at 3 a.m. And all of us, we said a prayer together and we headed down. And by the time that we got down to Phantom Ranch, which is the difference of 6,000 feet of elevation, the sun was starting to poke out. We started off at like 40 degrees and already down there was 70 degrees. And then during the day, it started to get up to 100 degrees. It was just so memorable, and it was like all the extremes. I wish that everybody could experience that. I knew that it was gonna be more survival mode there, just get down, get to the North Rim and get back out and just stick with the team and push and make sure that I'm there to help support those guys too if anything were to go astray. And coming out of 2024, I was also, I had a bunch of time spent in ultra marathons, but then I had a full winter spending time coming off an injury as well to prepare for this specifically. So I just felt really, really good. And at that point, I did not know that I was actually going to run the Burning River 100 at that point. I just knew coming out of that, just that high, I was like, I have to do something bigger than this year. And then that's when we threw down the Burning River 100. And I would say like the Burning River 100 was harder than rim to rim to rim. But I think that the one that far beyond exceeded my expectations and was the hardest of the year was Four Loop Pass. In Four Loop Pass, the reason why it was so difficult is that it was 4 12,500 foot peaks in 30 miles. And we were with a crew of 5 guys that could really push. And I had zero acclimation to any of the elevation that day. So I got in at midnight, we were on the trailhead by 6 a.m. and immediately was nauseous, immediately had headaches, and it made for a really long day. I didn't experience that during rim to rim to rim. You start off at 7,000 feet, you go down to about 1,000 feet, and you're back up to 8,000 feet, and you do it again. So it was manageable with the altitude. It was more so just strenuous on your legs during rim to rim to rim, whereas why Four Loop Pass was harder is that you start off at 7,000 feet, and then you're staying above 7,000 feet the entire time. And we were pushing. It was so fun.
So chronologically, it was rim to rim to rim.
So when you look at the entirety of the year, the main efforts were rim to rim to rim, which was 44 miles, 12,000 or so feet of elevation gain. Into my 30th birthday, we did 30 miles for 30 years. My wife surprised us with all my close friends. They would randomly like pop out of bushes and like randomly jump out of cars. It was so fun. But we ran from our home here to downtown Cleveland and back. And it was also on the same day that my son Crew and I celebrated our birthday together, because we're separated by about 4 hours. So that was so much fun. And then from there, did Mount Whitney, which was the tallest mountain in the lower 48. That was about 22 miles. While it wasn't an ultra, that was still super, super difficult, because you're starting off at 7,000 feet going up to 14,500, and all of us had some of the worst headaches, ran out of water. It was so fun, but it was definitely memorable and challenging. That led into doing the overnight 50-mile ultra, where we ran from my parents' house and we finished at Cedar Point. So that was 52 miles. Had a ton of fun there. Did that with my buddy Nick Stadler. From there, then finished off the last few weeks of prep for Burning River 100. DNF'd on that one. Having ran 100 miles before, I knew the type of effort and training that it would take, and how much of a team effort it is to get somebody solo from mile 0 to across the finish line on 100 miles. Like, it's a daunting task. But I was super excited about that, and there's something about the feeling that every single 100 miler you come in, you're kind of naive to it about what's going to happen. Dittmore, who's behind the camera right now, literally filming this, became not only like photo, video, but also crew the whole time. And so wearing a bunch of different hats, and also this being your first ultra that you had ever really crewed before and filmed outside of the overnight, it was trial by fire. So kudos to you. But one of the things I was reflecting on is like, man, why did we not release this? Why did we not release the footage, knowing that like somebody's gonna learn from this? But even more so, like I will gladly share my failures real time with people, if that means that there's gonna be like a good takeaway for somebody else, and also like if it's a learning moment for me, so I could become better. And so that was, I remember coming in being like, yeah, we're gonna do this thing, and 5 a.m. start, super fun, the crowd's going, we start going, and then about an hour in, the worst thunderstorm I had ever ran in my entire life ensued, and all of us are like, all right, here we go. None of us are like, oh crap, starting to like hang our heads down. It was more so this is going to be a surreal experience today. We need to lean in and just appreciate the fact that we even get to do this. So it was a good sustained, like hard rain, super hard rain, lightning. We're in the middle of this forest. My headlamp, which I thought was charged, ended up not being charged. So I'm using my iPhone light in the woods, and then the light started coming up, and it ended up becoming the hottest day of the year, which we didn't know was going to be the hottest day of the year. But it wasn't not only the hottest day of the year in Cleveland, Ohio, but it was also like the most humid day of the year. So you're going from this extreme of like it's kind of cold in the morning to thunderstorm to now I'm dumping water on my head at like mile 30, thinking like this is going to be the longest day of my life. And then you're starting to navigate these highs and lows, and you're all of a sudden meeting finally at mile 50. My first, JD was my first crew, or I should say pace person. And that just kind of continued to lead into like the next memorable moment and the next memorable moment, because each of these memorable moments, I just remember thinking like, we're going to freaking do this thing. It's going to be so fun. Brutal trail, 9,000 feet of elevation gain in Cuyahoga Valley National Park. And all of a sudden, I think it was mile 75, it felt like the biggest wall I'd ever experienced had hit. And I couldn't hold down any of my food, any of my water. I had never like thrown up during a race before. But I remember getting back to the aid station at mile 78 and looking at you guys thinking like, this is like, why am I even doing this? I remember just like sleeping there. And then also hearing through like you and Andy and JD, I think JD was there at the time, saying like, just let him sleep for another half hour, he'll be fine. And then I got back up and we did like another mile and got back to the car again. And thinking like, how am I gonna carry my daughter down the stairs tomorrow? And like every excuse coming to mind. I'm just like, I'm good, I'm happy with this. And we had stopped at mile 80, and like looking back upon it, like yes, we could continue to push, but I think that there was a moment that had struck to me that like running 80 miles that day was arguably my favorite run I've ever had in my life, because it was everything that I thought it wasn't going to be. I thought it was going to be like this good, like 85-degree warm day in Cleveland. And then we got absolutely bamboozled with every type of weather, every type of thing thrown at us. And it was at that moment just too much for me. And I decided to stop. And looking back, again, could I have kept going? Yes. Like, I wasn't dying. But there was a few moments where I realized, like, you know what? Like, that was a really great effort today, and I'm okay with that. And I'm going to be able to, like, look at my kids and look at my wife tomorrow and actually be able to be serviceable around the house. And that was my reasoning. That was literally my reason in the moment. And truthfully, I wouldn't want it any other way.
Is High Rocks on the table?
Yes, next year for sure. It was originally on the table for this year, but we ended up moving that to next year. I'd say the person that I believe that we would end up really pushing and going to Worlds with would be, we would do mixed doubles, pro division.